My name is Nasike. I am an environmentalist and an agroecologist by profession. I grew up in a small village in Budalangi. It's called Port Victoria. That's where I grew up with my grandparents. Aside from that, I work at Greenpeace Africa as a food campaigner, where my work involves working with local communities, specifically farmers. So basically, agroecology is a farming practice. It's not a farming practice per se, but it's a way of growing food that looks at merging both agriculture and environment in such a way that agriculture is not detrimental to the environment. We are not cutting down trees. We are making use of what the trees give us to use them on our farms. So we're looking at a wholesome way of growing food. That's what agroecology entails. In regards to my work, I work with farmers from 3 counties, Makueni, Machakos, and Kitui counties. This is through Greenpeace Africa. So this work basically aims at shifting mindsets from industrial agricultural farming practices, the use of chemical pesticides, chemical fertilizers, cutting down of trees from their farms, to ecological farming, where they are able to rely on nature for their farming solutions. So when we talk about reducing the reliance on chemical pesticides, we're looking at what are some of the options that we can give these farmers to control pests. How can we make sure that they use the available water on their farm to produce the required food or the right amount of food? We're looking at how do they increase soil fertility without being dependent on chemical fertilizers. How do they use indigenous seeds to produce foods instead of the hybrid seeds and the GMO seeds that are always fronted by seed companies? My inspiration would be the farmers, to be honest. We have been growing food in a manner that is detrimental. We are ruining soils, we're ruining water systems, which are essential in food production, because without water, without soil, where will food grow? Someone will say we can grow food in water, but if we're contaminating the same water, then where will food grow? So my inspiration was the farmers, because most of them were already tied in huge debts from some of these seed companies that are offering them loans on seeds and chemical fertilizers, and they needed a change. And for me, that was like a turning point to the work that I do. So can I bring in my expertise and teach these farmers how to grow food sustainably without depleting the natural resources on which their livelihood depends? So that was my biggest inspiration. And to be honest, so far I'm really happy of the work that we've done with them, the achievements that we've had with them. Moving farmers from being dependent on chemical pesticides and fertilizers is a huge thing, yeah? You've got to get them to believe in you, believe in the new things that you're telling them. And it's not just about you telling them what to do. They also get to share their experiences. Some of them would tell you that about 50 years ago when they were farming, they used to use this and this and this to control pests. Because most of the farmers, they are a bit older, advanced in age. So they would tell me, I used to use this tree to control pests and diseases on my farm. We used to grow several crops together to ensure that biodiversity thrived on our farms. But we don't do that anymore. We only do monoculture. We only do monoculture farming. We don't intercrop or crops anymore. Those are some of the things that they would share. And when you look at it, you're like, they used to do something good, but because the chemical pesticides came into the picture, the hybrid seeds came into the pictures, all that was changed. So we're looking at taking them to that mindset where they were initially before this pesticides and agrochemicals came into the picture. So my grandma is the reason why I got into the environmental space. She's the reason behind everything, my career, the work that I do today. She's the sole inspiration to what I do. When it comes to agroecology as well, just besides the farmers, being the inspiration to that, I look at the food systems, the way We no longer value the food we had before. Like, we young people no longer value the food we had before, which was rich in nutrients, which was culturally appropriate. We call it food sovereignty nowadays. Yeah, we no longer value that. Like, food has been commoditized. It's more of a commodity more than a way of life. Yeah, so if we can go back to that and try to connect to nature, in the sense that how we produce food is in line with how we live, then it's certainly going to better our lives. We're just not talking about getting safe food, but then also you get to learn about, if I contaminate the environment, then how is that going to affect me? Because most of the times people do not relate. Majority of the people do not relate environmental contamination to the effect on their health. So if we can relate it that way, then we'll be able to take care of the environment in a much more different way. I teach children how to grow food, not just growing food, but why it is important to take care of the environment. So I take them through various lessons, take them through soil, the importance of soil, the importance of clean water, the importance of clean air, importance of trees, all that. So there are a number of lessons that I take them through. The reason I focused on kids is because whatever I know today, I learned it when I was a child, and it has stuck with me till now. And I learned it from my grandmother. Like, I can tell you some of the trees, the native names and all that, and I learned that from my grandmother. So I thought, if I can teach other young kids about this, then they would certainly be able to take care of the environment in future. They would know where food comes from. Like the work I do under the Hummingbird, I work with children from slums. These are kids who do not have access to green spaces. They don't know where food comes from. When you ask them, where does food come from? Mama mboga. That's where they know. They don't know that food comes from the soil. So by virtue of teaching them that food comes from the soil, when you take care of the soil, then we're able to have healthy food. I am teaching these kids something about the environment, something about humanity with its connection to nature. My most joyous moment that pushes me forward in my line of work is seeing the farmers happy. They're elderly. So when you see them happy with the changes they've made on their farms, and seeing them informed, you tell them about the dangers of pesticides. They go and educate others. So when you come, they tell you, oh, we did this and it worked, or we educated this and she stopped using chemical pesticides. In my heart, I'm like, yeah, this is the moment. This is the change that I really want to see. People growing food in a healthy way, people having access to safe food. These farmers not only grow food for themselves, but they sell it to us consumers within cities such as Nairobi. So if they're able to grow food in a safe way, then it means that we can also have access to safe food. And that means that our health is protected. We don't have access to food that can actually harm our bodies, and which is very, very essential for our growth, for the nourishment of our bodies. The other thing that gives me joy is seeing those little children run to the garden to get vegetables, because most of them come from really poor backgrounds. Sometimes they miss meals. So when I see them getting vegetables from those little gardens, it gives me joy. I see them, like, they enjoy coming to the garden. Sometimes they plant stuff on their own, because we normally have planting sessions. So when I come the next week, I see them every week. So when I come the next week, they tell me, oh, Teacher Claire, we planted this. So do you think it's okay to plant them near here? I've already sparked that interest in them. So that interest, it's my work to nurture them, make sure that interest does not die. Those are some of the things that really give me joy. Making sure they have food, they have an interest in nature, they continue to learn about nature. It really gives me a lot of joy. I think for other young people, we need to sit down and evaluate the food that we eat. Is it safe? Is it healthy? Does it nourish our bodies? The way in which that food is produced, is it detrimental to the environment? Because once we do that evaluation, then we are able to assess whatever we eat. Is it right? Is it not right? most of the foods that now we consume today are foods that have been made to look cool, but they have no nutritional value to our bodies. Some of them, we consume them, and then people come and say obesity. We battle with issues such as obesity and undernourishment because the food we eat does not have the necessary nutrients. But when you look at the food our great-grandparents or grandparents used to eat, the sweet potatoes, the peanut stews, all those foods that you find in the village, the kienyeji foods as we call them, those are foods that are rich in nutrients. Those are foods that we are supposed to be eating, foods that are good for our bodies. And most of these are foods that are locally grown. They can be found anywhere in the villages. These are foods that you walk to the market today, you'd find them there. Those are the foods we need to eat. And I think for other young people, we need to start making local grown food cool. We need to make the kienyeji foods cool. Because like today, if someone walks to your door and you offer them sweet potatoes for breakfast, they'll be like, don't you have bread? Don't you have pancakes? Don't you have bacon? But we forget about the sweet potatoes, which have a very high amount of vitamin A. No, those are foods that are really nutritious for our body. So we need to start making local foods, kienyeji foods, cool. And not just local foods, but local foods that have been grown in a safe way. We have smallholder organic farmers that grow this organic food. We need to go and interact with these farmers, find out how do they grow this food, share this information with our friends. If I came today and I told you, oh, I've met this organic farmer, he's just based here in Kikuyu, he grows very nice tomatoes, very nice potatoes, very nice nduma. Now you'd be inclined to want to meet that smallholder farmer. So that is something that we need to do as young people. We need to go back to what our grandparents used to do. These foods that they used to eat. Relearn them, because I know most of us have forgotten those foods. We need to relearn those foods. How are they grown? What are the benefits of this food? Why were they culturally important or appropriate? I think once we do that, we reconnect with our cultural ways of growing food, then we have to make sure that now other people are also accepting this as food. Because most young people that I meet, particularly kids, when you tell them nduma ngwashe, they don't know that as food. What they know is bread, toast. That's what they know as food. I like to say we are what we eat, and our environment dictates our health. So those two things. And I like to tie them to food systems and the environment, in the sense that the food that you eat, if it comes from a contaminated environment, then you are the contamination in the environment. Be it the chemicals, be it, everything in the environment, you are that. Because the environment where you are at is where you find everything, your water, your food, and everything. So if we are what we eat, and we know food comes from environment, then it is our utmost duty to take care of where our food comes from. And once we take care of it, we can confidently say, I'm what I eat, because what I eat comes from a clean environment. The water is clean, the soil is clean, the air is clean. So we are in unison with the environment. We don't exist individually, but we are part of a community. We are part of a wholesome community which involves human beings and the environment.